We're very excited to be in Singapore on this innovation mission from the Netherlands. Well, for the next 30 minutes, I will talk to my great panelists, experts in proteins. And yeah, before I will give them the floor, just briefly introduce myself. I work at Rabobank. Rabobank is a Dutch bank on cooperative principles. We are a global leader in food and agricultural sector. Sorry, is it okay? It seems like, yeah. So internationally, we focus on food and agriculture. And in the Netherlands, we are a retail bank and we serve consumers and businesses in all sectors. Enough about me. Just go quickly over to our panelists and give you all a 1 or 2 minute time to introduce yourself. Let's start with Johan.
Hi, thank you. My name is Johan de Schepper. I'm Chief Innovation Officer of Agrifirm, the Agrifirm Group. That's a cooperative, so a farmer-owned cooperative who has activities, of course, very much in the Netherlands. I think about 75% of our turnover is made in the Netherlands, not our profit, and about 25% abroad, amongst others in Southeast Asia. We are 85% animal protein focused, just to set the stage. Yeah, and that is, of course, for us a big challenge, but we will come back on that at the next question.
Thank you. Angelique.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Angelique van Helvoort. Really honored to be here and also really glad to be in Singapore. I actually lived here for 3.5 years, but it's already 8 years ago, so really feel at home again being here. I'm actually wearing 2 hats. As introduced before, I work for the East Netherlands Development Agency, so consider this like the light version of the EDB in Singapore. So helping companies from abroad with a soft landing in the eastern part of the Netherlands. But I'm now currently seconded to the World Economic Forum, where I work as a program manager for food innovation hubs, really to scale and accelerate innovations and try to bring that together in a community. So that's another part why I'm here. So very excited to be here.
Thank you, Angelique. Jan.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jan Meiling. We work with startups all day, every day. We are the longest running and leading Agri-Food Tech Accelerator in Europe, and the name is Startlife. Thank you.
Thank you. Johan. There's 2 Johans in the room.
Yeah, so that's the next Johan. Yeah? So, hi, Johan. Yeah. So my name is Johan. So I'm professor at the Utrecht University in life sciences. So I'm a medical doctor as well. I'm heading and sharing Future Food Utrecht. So that sounds highly interesting, especially for this conference. What we try to do is link planetary health, so sustainability, with human and animal health. Yeah? And the protein shift is extremely important in that. So we're trying to combine research, innovations, explorations within the academic environment, together with hospitals, but also with spin-offs and big multinationals. That's it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much all for keeping it brief. We will touch upon several items that Willemien already set out to set the scene for the Netherlands. When we in the Netherlands talk about alternative proteins, we also talk about protein transition or protein shift. To some, that is a shift towards a more balanced diet, and to others, that is the transition to a more sustainable food system. What in terms of trends, let's see, Johan, in terms of trends, when we look at the availability and diversity of existing and alternative proteins, what do you see happening on a national level?
Yeah, first of all, I already said 85% of our company's revenue comes from animal protein, and we're changing that. So our big why is actually we want to really make steps and impact on climate change and really fighting that, going to neutrality. And on the other hand also the challenge of food, because that's the trick. If you talk about food, when you talk about food, you talk about the fact that on this globe about 50 million square kilometers is used for crops. And of those 50 million square kilometers crops, between 60 FAO and 80%, that's the World Resource Institute, is used for feed. Now that's not very effective. If you want to have food for a population that is growing, some people say 50%, other people say 70% more food, then you need to use the land for food, because you can't touch the woods. To the contrary, you should have more woods. So that's our big why an Agrifirm, where we have been doing animal nutrition for the last 140 years. We are now shifting to, as you said it rightly, a more balanced approach. Our strategy is embedded in protein transition, bringing people in the Northwestern Europe, but also abroad, from animal protein more towards plant-based, because you use the soil well at that moment. You use the crops on the soil for food and not to be inefficient via an animal too. That doesn't mean that there will not be animal nutrition, because as you know, outside of Northwestern Europe, animal protein is growing with 15%. So there we also need solutions in order not to get stuck on land use. And this is where we focus on protein transition on the one hand towards food, and on the other hand on using waste streams, it was mentioned by Ida, on using waste streams towards animals, not just in Northwestern Europe, also for instance in China. We do the same in China. That said, maybe a last word on my side. In the Netherlands, we only have 185 hectares of soy, 185. We only have 9,000 hectares of leguminosa, so legumes. And these legumes mostly go to feed. Now they should go to food. And we should have that 100,000 hectares that is on there. And we're going to work for that.
Great, thank you. Interesting to hear that a company like Agrifirm is making this move. Jan, can you, from your point of view, tell a bit more?
I think one of the major trends that we see is that the larger players really stepped in the past years, right? So alternative proteins was for a while the domain of small, agile companies with disruptive propositions, but I think in the past years, seeing the larger players coming in really is going to move the needle. I'm personally very happy with that, and it also means that there's apparently a business opportunity related to the protein transition. So I'm very happy to see that we also see the protein transition as an opportunity for many people to have a more comfortable and sustainable lifestyle. So that's what I see happening.
Yeah, it's always good to have the disruptors there, but when the big companies jump in and the availability increases, we see normally that consumers are more willing to buy products the more that is available. So,
exactly.
Yeah. Johan, when we look at consumer acceptance, talking about consumers, when we look at consumer acceptance, what do you see happening there?
Just adding to what you just said, also multinationals, and that is what I have seen the last 10 years. So the small companies, they are pioneering, so they do a great job in the Netherlands, but also in Singapore. But I'm working together with a company like Nutricia, which is a huge multinational. And I do see what they are doing. They are moving more and more in plant-derived proteins as alternatives for dairy proteins. And not because they think they earn more money, but just it's linked to planetary health and sustainability. So big companies, it's indeed true, they are interested in it more and more and more. Then with respect to the consumers, 10 years ago, it was something for alternative people. That's what we thought, yeah? But that is changing now. I am professor within the faculty of pharmacy, so it's hardcore drugs. And I do see now that they are more and more interested in food to help for health, and that they realize that it cannot be only food or proteins from animals. Yeah, so plant-derived proteins, then they can do a great job. So this concept is now also landing at the consumer level. So they are more and more interested in buying and tasting and eating plant-derived proteins. Yeah, it's very difficult to come up with numbers. Maybe you know that, but it's really changing. So it's going fast. So we should stay there and continue our story. Extremely important. Yeah.
Yep. Good. Thank you, Jan. Angelique? Well,
Yeah.
Johan was looking at you, so.
Yeah, maybe to add some numbers to that. If you look at recent numbers, over 50% of people in the Netherlands don't eat meat or fish on a daily basis. So they eat at least once a week an alternative. So, and that has really grown. If we look at the past 2 years, that has grown with 10%. So that's a huge increase we see. And as you compare it to other countries in Europe, I think the Netherlands is really a front runner in this. So I think we are like the champion of the flexitarians, people who don't eat meat or fish on a daily basis. And many of those people eat alternative, like plant-based proteins for that. So the acceptance for these kind of products is really big. And also if you look in the supermarkets, where 10 years ago it was very hard to find a plant-based alternative, now it's just as much as you can buy chicken products in the supermarket. So really growing very fast.
Thank you, Angelique. I think you're right. In all retailers in the Netherlands, the availability is increasing by the day. So that's really going to help. Let's go to a different topic, money. I work at a bank. That's not the reason why I want to ask this question. But innovation generally costs money. So Jan, a question to you. What role do you see for the finance sector to play a role in accelerating this, well, the shift or the development of alternative proteins?
Let's say from two angles. First of all, venture capital, and maybe secondly, banks. So on an annual basis, we co-produce an investment report on Europe, and we, of course, see double-digit growth in venture capital going into agri-tech and food tech startups. But I think what is even more interesting is the fact that in 2021, for the first time, there was more money going into venture capital in Europe in agri-food tech startups than the total private R&D expenditure in the same sector, right? So these are not the same entities, I know, but it is a clear manifestation that money is flowing quite a bit to smaller, more agile vehicles, startups and scale-ups, to also collaboratively organize the innovation that we need. So we see quite a bit of the money shifting from classical R&D towards more collaborative business models between younger companies and larger companies. Secondly, I think the protein transition is about evolution and revolution, right? So on the one hand, we see the large disruptive moonshots like cellular egg and stuff like that. But on the other hand, we also know, and Johan already stressed that, animal proteins will not be away in 10 years, and maybe also not in 100 years, and they're about to stay there here as well. So it also means evolution. It also means that farmers and companies need to change, let's say, their production systems for a more sustainable food system. And I think what is a challenge is the fact that especially farmers, they typically don't have the budget to truly innovate. So they really have to rely on, let's say, collaborative efforts and pre-competitive projects together with the industry to innovate towards more sustainable production systems, also animal production systems, but also plant production systems. So I think money will be indeed the challenge. So hopefully banks will be able to help and will be willing to help also in the transition, both in evolution and in the revolution that we both need.
Yes, you're right. I think you're right. But you said about, can I ask you another question? Looking back at the last 10 years, 2021 was probably the top years in terms of investment. Do you have a bit of an outlook for this year? How that is going?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I think only yesterday the Asian report was published by AgFunder on the venture capital investments in agro and food tech companies. And it seems that especially the first quarter of 2022 was a little bit more reluctant. So I think in the venture capital world, people are using the word dry powder a lot. So there's a lot of dry powder. There's more than enough capital. But considering the circumstances that we have, especially facing, let's say, the uncertainties going on in the Ukraine and so on, means that investors tend to be a little bit more reluctant this year. But I think the general trend is a steeper rise still, and I believe it still will increase. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Okay, going over from financing to collaboration, because to accelerate innovation, you also need to collaborate. And in the Netherlands, we're very keen on collaborating, and we're always keen on strategic partnerships. So, well, Johan, do you have any I'll start with Johan at the back. Do you have any examples from your
There are two
field of
Johans, it's a
expertise?
bit complex, but just one additional comment to what you just said. So there are these investors, there are the banks. Yesterday I asked her, can you finance a few PhD students, but I did not receive any answer, by the way. Yeah? But there is also a role for the government, yeah? And we do have these top sectors in the Netherlands. And it's pretty unique because there we try to combine, and that is collaboration, private companies and research institutions and academic scientists, because we need them both. And there are top scientists within the academia, there are top scientists also within companies, and they have to work together. And we do have wonderful systems for that in the Netherlands, and that is something we should continue and even go bigger, yeah, because the topic is so hot. It's so hot, and it's more and more accepted. So everyone is realizing that we should do it. And what is triggering me, also now, I'm now in Singapore, so not only for this food, but also for health missions, that health and food and sustainability, so planetary health, they are coming very close to each other, and that's what we should continue, and even speed up, yeah, with money from banks, from investors, but also from governments and for example the EU and maybe Singapore in the future. So working together, that is key, is essential. Yeah.
Well, it's a good call out to everyone.
I'm doing that. So I'm professor at the university, but I'm very close to big companies where we try to translate the science into something that makes sense, and that is health. Yeah.
I think it's a very valuable combination of science and businesses. And this Johan, do you have an example?
When a big tanker has to make moves, it's not easy. So you have to do your traditional R&D, as I call it like that. You have to do that inside of the company, and we completely gear it today to sustainalizing what we do today, because we still have farmers who want answers. But we don't work anymore on feed conversion, for instance. That's over. We don't do that anymore. Our teams are circularity, greenhouse gas emission, healthy soil, and one health, your health of the people. But that's traditional R&D. When you want to we don't want to make the move when you move, because of our big why, the land use, to protein, to more plant-based protein, you need to do that. I would not call it off track, but actually disconnected from the big business, because you make people confused. Jan knows that, you know that too. You make people confused. So first condition, do it not in the core, but do it outside of the core. Secondly, go fast. And how do you go fast? By collaborating. And how do we collaborate? There are 4 tracks that we're using. The first track is we invested in a venture capital fund. It's called Astanor. I don't have any shares, but it's a good fund. It's food and agriculture and sustainability all together. That's a window on the world, from Australia to the US. Secondly, we have platforms. Enterprise Singapore is one of them, Startlife another one, and AFTEA Garage in Sao Paulo another one. That gives us, again, input. But then, very concrete, we work together with startups for our protein transition. And our protein transition is twofold. We want to bring more protein in the northwestern European soil, but then you need to make sure the farmer has a perspective and has yield. So then you need new crops, new varieties. And there we work with a startup called Protealis. What's in the name? It's linked to the Belgian VIB, which is a quite well-known second in the world on plant science. And they have crops that are earlier to harvest, so you can have a better security for the farmer. That's one leg. But the other leg, and it has been mentioned before, is how to upgrade waste into protein. That's easier said than done. But if you ask a cooperative of 1892 how to do that, there are some people who have ideas, but it would go very slow. So we work together also there with startups. There is, for instance, the protein brewery and bioscience Yeah, that's with those people we have a very close collaboration. Havicom, which is a Belgian one. So these are really propelling our progress. 1 year ago we started fermenting. Today we harvest. Today we go in animals to see what's cooking, how it's working, and the ultimate goal is to upcycle waste into protein for food. But given the European regulations, that may take a little bit longer. Yeah. So really, it's a must to work with small companies who are much more agile, but you have to be picky, because a lot are calling for, but very few are really good. So you really have to be picky. Yeah.
Thank you, Johan. Well, being part of one of those oil tankers, I know, I know how that works. Angelique, do you want to?
Maybe give a very concrete example. I work for the World Economic Forum for the Food Innovation Hubs, so I think that's a real example of how we really want to stimulate collaboration to really fight the big challenges we have nowadays, but also to keep it a bit closer to home, to the Netherlands. I am from Wageningen, and we also have a small office at Wageningen campus. And I think there you can really see a physical ecosystem. It's an ecosystem where you can find university, research institutes, big corporates like Unilever, Upfield, Friesland Campina, but also startups, a lot of innovative companies, small and medium enterprises, also Startlife is there. And it is really a community. You can really see that. It's easy, if you just walk around, you can meet everyone. And a concrete example of collaboration there, I think, is also that the equipment there is shared. So we have shared research facilities. For many of starting companies, it's extremely expensive to use the equipment they need, and it's already there. So why not use that? And there's like a database for that where also other companies work with. So I think that's also an example of collaboration to really scale and accelerate things.
Thank you. Well, it's good to hear that you all agree that collaboration is needed, and it just completely fits with Wilhelmine's story about how we want to build an ecosystem and partnerships being part of it. I expect someone to raise a finger if the time is almost 5 more minutes. Okay, just go to the last question. Well, we're in Singapore for a good reason. It's one of the hubs when it comes to alternative proteins, and we as the Netherlands, I think we can say we are also a front runner. So a question to you: how can we help strengthen the collaboration between these global hubs? Can be the Netherlands and Singapore, can be other countries like Israel, US, where a lot is going on. See. Angelique, you want to?
Yeah, of course. Would like to jump in on that one. I really believe also in a local approach. So you need those local ecosystems like they are here in Singapore, like we have in the Netherlands. But I also really believe in the strength of collaboration. And if we share knowledge, what works well, what doesn't work well, what are the best partnerships you need in order to scale and accelerate? If we really share that kind of knowledge in a community, and that's what we try now also with the Food Innovation Hubs, I think that can really help to drive the transition we need.
Thank you. Jan, Johan,
yeah,
who wants to?
Maybe to add to that,
yeah.
The Netherlands is recognized throughout the world as top on agriculture. So when we will be top in this, also people will start to connect easy with the Netherlands and with the Dutch ecosystem. So that's really something we have to bank on. We are so well appreciated. So when we make moves towards more plant-based, we make moves towards more biotech-driven protein production, precision fermentation all along, then people will look at us and will reach out, and we will reach out to them too. So those ecosystems will come together because it's a very good brand, the Netherlands. And it's not just the branding, but it's also good content. So I'm pretty sure that ecosystem connection, that will go very easily. I say this as a Belgian, by the way. So, yeah.
Good, thank you. And Johan.
But just adding to that, I work already since many years together with the academic sector in Singapore, and it's pretty successful. So I think the level of research we do in Holland versus Singapore, that is comparable. And a meeting like this, where we can meet each other instead of online talking and chatting, that is really helpful. So we visited some companies yesterday and some institutions and universities. I really think there is a unique opportunity to even to increase the collaborations between the Netherlands and Singapore.
Yes.
So
But you said you're already working together for quite some years. So how did you get that started?
That's funny. Within life sciences, it's starting with doing your own research, and then you find a professor in this university in Singapore that is in the same area active. And then you start to discuss, and then you are exchanging students, master students, and then, step by step, it's growing.
Yeah, I think you're right. And
Yeah.
well, let's be honest, being here together, seeing each other in real life instead of on screen, that
yes.
also helps quite a bit.
Sometimes starting small is really helpful. That's
Absolutely.
also what you said. Spin-offs is really helpful
Small.
because that is pioneering
MVP.
and just try out, and then at the end it's successful. No doubts about that. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think we have a lot of discussion. Everyone agrees on most topics, so I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you very much for your input here, and up to the next speaker.